The date is Monday, July 18th, 2022. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Equalization of Kings County. We are continually meeting the protocols of COVID-19. So the board this morning will be using the WebEx platform, whether you're joining us by the web or by teleconference. We thank you for participating in today's meeting. For those interested in commenting during unscheduled, please use the raise your hand feature online and wait to be recognized, and then you'll be allowed up to 2 minutes for public comment. Members in the audience that have filled out speakers cards will be taken in the order they're received by the clerk, and online speakers will be taken up in the order they appear in the WebEx program. And so thank you very much. Each vote today will be a verbal vote with a voice vote so that members of the public can hear how each member has voted. After each motion and second, we'll then take up the vote. So with that, in order to establish quorum, I'm going to ask now for the clerk to please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Here.
Richard Valley.
Here.
Doug Raboon.
Here.
Craig Peterson.
Here.
Richard Fagundes.
Here. All members present, thank you very much. We have established quorum. We will be able to conduct business. If I can ask you all to please rise now as we honor America with the reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, everyone. The next item on the agenda is unscheduled appearances. Any person may directly address the board at this time on any item on the agenda or any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of this board. Speakers will be limited to 2 minutes. I see no one online. And Madam Clerk, do you have a record of anyone under
We
unscheduled?
did not receive any emails, and we did not get anybody to fill out speaker cards, so nobody.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. Having no one come forward, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes from the meeting held on July 12th.
There's no question, no comment. I'll move for approval.
Thank you. Second. Moved by Fagundes, seconded by Richard Valley. Thank you very much. Discussion on the minutes. Hearing or seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Joe Nevs.
Yes.
Richard Valley.
Aye.
Doug Raboon.
Yes.
Craig Peterson.
Aye.
Richard Fagundes.
Yes.
Let the record show the minutes stand approved, 5 in favor. Thank you very much, everyone. The next item, we're moving to regular agenda items, and the item is to consider accept the report of the assessment roll and set the date for a final report to be determined in the future. So Assessor Christy Lee, good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Christy Lee, Assessor, Clerk Recorder. As you know, pursuant to R&T Code Section 1604A2, the local Board of Equalization is required to meet the third Monday in July to begin the business of equalizing the assessment of property on the local roll. This traditionally has been the time when I present the roll to the board. This year, I requested an extension through the State Board of Equalization for a couple of reasons. And that extension was granted. So we have until July 31st to complete the business of closing the roll. There were a couple of reasons for making the request. One is the new property system. So as you all know, we had a property system previously that was built in the 1980s, and we have replaced that thanks to your board. And with that, it was a huge undertaking, and although it has gone rather smoothly, there's been a few glitches along the way, some things that were different in our old system than they are in the new system that had to be configured. So that took a little extra time on our part. In addition, we have had staffing craziness, for lack of a better word. Currently, we have 6 people out of 30 that have been with the office more than a year and 3 months. So 80% of our staff is rather new, and half of those started in April or more currently. So of course, training all the new staff members is a lot. In the audience, Tim and Erica, they're leaders in the office, the chief appraiser and the senior appraiser, and they have done an excellent job in keeping things rolling. So I wanted to go ahead and give you a little update on things while we're all here. I appreciate you being here, even though we will have to continue to get the full report and the actual numbers to be presented. But County Council did feel that it was necessary to meet today per the Revenue and Taxation Code. So one of the main things I wanted to bring up is that we're keeping an eye on the effects of SGMA on farmland, and particularly the ag preserve. I've met with the Farm Bureau this year and am taking a collaborative approach where we work together to determine the effects of SGMA and the water restrictions on, and what the water restrictions are placing on ag land, excuse me. The office will monitor recent sales of ag land, fallowed land, and land that's being taken out of production. We will identify recently negotiated land rents and expenses such as water shares and groundwater, and then consider the impacts of removal of trees. We've been proactive in making changes in this year's Williamson Act program. The state once again lowered the base rate, third year in a row. This rate is based on long-term bond yield, which would have resulted in an increase to the Williamson Act assessments. My office has increased the Williamson Act risk component to 0.25% to recognize the drought and looming water restrictions and offset the state's failure to recognize the current climate for farmers. Commodity values continue to increase this year, according to the Ag Commissioner. We will monitor these values and compare them to our neighboring counties to ensure that we're using multiple resources to substantiate the numbers that drive the Williamson Act. The office is also reviewing and auditing many facets of the ag assessments during the property system conversion. This should increase the accuracy of assessments. Specifically, we're auditing the plantings. And just a reminder that there is a solar exclusion for farmers that put in solar on their properties. There may be a change to that per SB 1340, which is an amendment that's being proposed, and specifically for systems that are over 20 megawatts. And then my final reminder is about Prop 19. I've spoke to you a little before about that. There's two components to the Prop 19 that was voted on in 2020 and became effective in 2021. One is the intergenerational transfer. So previously you could transfer your house and $1 million worth of property to your children and they would retain the tax base. Now the $1 million of additional property is no longer part of that transfer. It would be revalued. You can still transfer your personal residence and they can maintain that property value as long as a child is moving into the property. It can't be a niece, nephew, or some other relative. If they rent the property, it would be reassessed. So, and then the second part of that is the base year value transfer, which is that if you're 55 or older, you can transfer the base year value of your current home to another home anywhere in the state of California up to 3 times. So as you can imagine, this is a bit of a tracking challenge that all counties are having because we're having to coordinate how many times base years have been transferred. So that's all I have for now, but I would like to ask that we come back in approximately a month to meet again so I can give a full report with the values. One thing I could mention is we do see that there will be an increase in the property roll this year, as you probably would expect with the rising prices. But I will have solid numbers for you. We're planning on getting the roll closed the end of this week.
Very good. Thank you. Questions or comments?
So just kind of some basic stuff with respect to rising cost and your ability to adjust. Is it quicker to adjust up or quicker to adjust down, or is it equal, that an equal effort, so to say.
As far as the ag preserve,
Timing wise, so when you adjust up, you were talking about housing, I think. You have the ability to adjust up. In that same timeline, you can adjust back down, or is it staggered, or is there any limitations on readjusting back down?
good question. Is that, you're talking about if the economy starts
Sure.
dropping? Yes. So to adjust up, most properties are under the Prop 13, so we are only allowed by law to adjust up 2%. And that kind of is a blanket adjustment for most properties in the county. Of course, if they've transferred ownership, we would revalue them specifically based on the market value. But to adjust down, it would be market value. So we would have to take a look at each individual property for the most part. If we can identify neighborhoods, like if there is a total downturn of the economy, which is expected, we can be proactive in recognizing neighborhoods and subdivisions and basically do a downward adjustment pretty easily. It's the custom homes that are difficult to identify whether or not they need an adjustment. So it's a very good question. It's a little of yes and no. It's not as easy as a Prop 13, 2% because that's built into our system, but it is something that we would be required to do for sure.
Christy, I have a question for clarification, if I may. When you say you're allowed to increase by 2% annually, now do you determine how much to increase, or is that a number that's dictated by someone other than yourself?
That number is dictated by the state of California, and it's the same number for all counties within California. So it's up to 2%. So normally inflation is going to increase more than 2%, but we're limited through Prop 13 to only go up to 2%. But the state will let us know. And if inflation is less than 2% in any particular year, then the state would recognize that. And if it's a downturn, sometimes there's negative percentages where there is an across-the-board reduction.
But that's just for property that hadn't changed hands.
That's correct, because then it would be fair market value otherwise. I just, when Christy had said that, that she can adjust and stemming from that question, and I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that it's not Christy that determines
Right.
how much, whether it goes up 2% or 1.5 or 0.3, 0.75%, but it's actually the state that dictates the number for the county.
Yeah, the hard part's going to be for ag, especially if some of the groundwater management comes in and says pumping rates are only going to be 1.5 feet or less. So if they're only able to pump 0.5 foot.
Do we have that in Greater Kuya already?
There are several GSAs that have adopted a 0.5 foot limit
But does that come into Kings County?
on the east side.
Yeah.
The Kauai, I don't think Mid has done anything, but I think Kauai, the ones that kind of border Tulare County. Farther east
What I'm
side.
hearing is they get 1.5 feet, right? And if they go over their allotted assessment or put over 1.5 feet, they lose it next year.
And,
Goes against them.
yeah, and they want to charge, but the charge is less than if you had to buy the water. So it's still a work in progress.
Well, yeah, what I understand, if they charge them for the water, they overuse, and it's not that much money, but then the next year if they went over 0.5 foot, then they get 1.5 feet, they only get 1 foot.
Correct. So
That's correct.
it's like,
But then they can they pay for extra water?
that's
So
some,
it defeats the purpose.
exactly. And can you make a deal with your neighbor and use his allocation? There's still a lot of things that are still work in progress. But they are trying to go to a water market basis for that. So, and overall, it just is to maintain water value elevation. So, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
You need a motion on this?
Um,
I think
Diane,
there's
do we need a formal motion or do we just need to table?
Make a
it?
motion to accept report as presented.
Well, there wasn't really a report. It was just an oral report. And so
It's an
the,
update.
and an
To
update,
be filed when
Reads what it
the
says.
report is finished.
final, yeah, and the final
Accept the
report,
reporting of the assessment roll.
yeah, so the final
Date
report
for
will come
future
later.
meeting.
Yeah.
You
You want
know,
formal action or you just want to table and,
we can table. We don't need a formal action to accept the report.
yeah, I think, because, yeah, the report's really not finalized. So I think just table to
Yes.
a date to be determined and allow Christie the ability to select that date and not hold her to a firm,
Is there a tentative date, Mr. Chairman?
before the 30th of July or something? Before the end of the month
before the 30th of August.
or August? Yeah, so,
We're just discussing, we do have quite a bit of items that are going to be on the BOE for
Calendar.
17th, and we possibly could put it on that date, but we want to see if that was.
yeah, I think it'd probably be better just to leave it determined. That way, we can allocate the proper time and date and make sure and not put anybody on a deadline or have anybody locked in. For planning purposes, I think, yeah, anytime between now and the end of August.
The board has
Adequate time,
notice, yes.
yeah. So I think that gives the assessor, clerk recorder the opportunity to select the date that works best for her staff and works well with the board.
Week of 1 through 5, Mr. Chair, August I won't be here.
What date?
August 1 through 5th.
Through 5th,
Tentatively, the 17th sounds pretty good.
August 17th. So if you do want to pencil that in, August 17th.
We actually have Board of Equalization set for 8/4, 8/12, and 8/17.
I'm working on a stipulation for 8/4. We'll see.
Yeah, and so August 17th is a Thursday
Wednesday.
or Wednesday. Yeah, and it's already programmed in. So yeah, the 17th. Yep. Okay, because and the clerk has everyone's calendar, so we'll work around everyone, different schedules.
I may have well, that's Wednesday. Good.
A Wednesday, yeah, it's been moved, yeah. I misspoke when I thought it was a Thursday.
If we go past 11:30, someone has to buy sandwiches, right? Or lunch.
I'll buy.
All right, any other discussion on dates, times, or programming? With that, I think everyone has the proper direction. And so I guess just a motion to table until to be determined.
We don't need a formal motion to table it to be
No.
determined. It is tabled to be determined, so we'll bring it back and at a later date when
With
the rolls
with the
close.
proper notice and
Yes,
with the
with the proper
proper
notice.
notification. So with that, if there are no other questions or comments, concerns, everybody checking their phones, everybody checking their messages. Everybody checking.
Mr. Chairman.
Very good. With that, we will stand adjourned until the next time we're needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.